Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, I'm going to talk about a topic that it's not the easiest one to talk about. It's a difficult topic. It's very often avoided. It's difficult to face, but I think it's really important to talk about it, and that is burnout. I made this presentation through my own personal burnout story. And I will share the things that helped me and that I learned on my journey from experiencing burnout and healing from it and getting on the other side. But yeah, let's begin. Before we go deeper into things, first I would like to talk about because there's lots of people think, oh, you will get a burnout just because if you work very hard or if you have a job that you really don't like and it's stressing you out. But it's more than that. Actually, you can even have a burnout even if you're not working, because burnout happens when you're exposed to intense stress for a longer period of time. For example, if you find yourself in a situation that you're looking for a job for a really long time and you can't get it, you might actually experience burnout. But here we are going to talk primarily about the burnout that happens at the workplace. Now, burnout is not an illness, it's a symptom. That's how it's been classified by the World Health Organization a couple of years ago, but it can lead to potentially serious illnesses. Um, Burnout was first time as a word coined in 1970s when it was noticed, particularly in with the stockbrokers, with the yuppie culture of the 80s, which had like really stressful jobs. But burnout can actually happen to anybody. It can happen to C-level executive in any industry, at any job, regardless where we are in our career. Nobody is immune to it. But the data shows us that actually burnout is slightly more prevalent with women and non-binary people. We are going to a little bit later dig in into reasons why burnout happen, and they will see that there's some correlation with this decade. Said nobody's immune to that, and burnout can happen to a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of incompetence. It doesn't mean that you are strong enough. It doesn't mean that you are not good enough. It's nothing like that. We're actually gonna go and dig in what are the reasons why burnout happen, and it is not you. One burnout is that although we understand it much better and it's more studied and we have more tools how to handle it and how to prevent it, that the rates of burnout are continue to grow. There was a big international study and lots of data in this presentation are from that study. It's called Burnout Global Index. And it showed that there was 38% of people experienced burnout in last year, and it keeps on growing. And that's something that's really, really concerning. Um, but why am I talking about burnout? I'm not a psychologist. I'm gaming industry executive. But I had a burnout myself. And this is where I kind of had to learn how to handle it, how to recognize it. And I started to speak openly about it only about 6 months ago, although my happened about 2.5 years ago. It's because it's still so sensitive topic to discuss. So what happened to me? I was brought up to work hard, not to ask for much, just work very hard, commit yourself to work. And then fast forward, I moved abroad, and I was a woman in a male-dominated industry, and I was an immigrant. So I'm originally Croatian, and I lived in Finland for 15 years. This is where I built my career. This pressure that you have to prove yourself, that you have to work harder, that if you want to get promoted, I'm a very ambitious person. If you want to go that extra mile, that you just need to do more. I would never say no to work. I never said no to overtime. I volunteered for things. I really committed myself. I was just going for it. And of course, it's very easy to overburden yourself. But then I realized if I take a bit of holidays, I would feel better. So I really when I started tired and exhausted and work was not giving me joy, I start to get like a bit fluish. But if I take a couple of weeks off, I come back, I was recharged and I continued again. And this kind of weird relationship with work and burnout worked for some time until the perfect storm happened. An entrepreneur. who was already a workaholic come to an environment where overwork is celebrated. Entrepreneurship, it's so much about hustle culture, going for it, working long hours, working weekends, always be available, answer your emails while you're sleeping. I'm exaggerating, but not really. And then my startup was like my life mission. I went for something that was really like a Northern Star. I wanted to create a equitable workplace. It was about how we make games. I wanted to create this blueprint how studios can do things much more. So it was really, the high target, very passionate about it, and kind of I became one with my company. Kind of my own identity got lost, and I was completely swallowed by it. And I committed myself to it, 1,000%. And of course, I experienced burnout, but the problem happened with days. I returned and I came back and I still felt bad. I still felt very tired. I couldn't sleep. I felt depleted. I didn't feel like socializing. I was just going back to work, but everything felt so heavy. I just felt swamped. And it ended up with me actually getting physically sick that I had to go to the hospital and I had to have a surgery, emergency surgery. I lost two internal organs. And that was really a wake up call when I had to stop and think, right, this is not really sustainable. I have to change my relationship with work and how I do things. Um, and that was a long journey then of learning and healing of how to actually handle burnout and how to change my relationship with work. But I mentioned some of the symptoms of burnout, what I had. Now, everybody is different. Everybody has their own, and they might in a different way. These are some of the symptoms that are relatively common, but there are other ones that can happen or might not happen. One of them is, as I've already mentioned, insomnia, that you start to feel it's really hard to sleep. And when you fall asleep, the quality of sleep is really bad. Irritability, I'm genuinely very open, easy to approach, easygoing person. I see mistakes as chances for learning, but I became so irritable that I had like very little tolerance for my mistakes or anybody else's mistakes, and things that I would easily brush off or laugh at like were really made me angry. I had a very low energy. I felt depleted. I didn't feel joy in doing anything anymore, not in the work that I like, not in um, hobbies that I enjoyed. Everything just felt it feeling flat. I didn't want to socialize with anybody. And if it was socializing, it was only work related. It was nothing about anything outside of the work. And I started to feel anxious and even on the edge of depression. I felt really sad about everything about myself. And I would have this like emotional outbursts. And I'm an optimist. I'm a very positive person. Suddenly I was seeing everything through, black tinted glasses. And last but not least, there are some physical symptoms. For me, started with digestion problems, which became much worse, and so ended up going for a surgery. But physical symptoms can show up differently for different people. It can affect your heart, your blood pressure, skin, or you might get frequent infections. So it might affect different people differently. And as I said, these are some of the symptoms that people who have burnout might have, but not everybody's going to have all the symptoms, and you won't have them in the same time. But why does burnout happen in the first place? It's not only because you work too hard. So the study that I mentioned in the beginning actually compared people who were experiencing burnout and people who are not experiencing burnout. And the biggest difference is that people who did not experience burnout felt 217% more supported by their organization. And that is the key. The people who are working in places where they felt supported, where they felt more engaged, they felt psychological safety, higher sense of belonging, they were much less likely to experience burnout than in the places which. And digging deeper, there are 5 key causes of burnout at work. One of them is something that it's familiar, what we usually associate with burnout, which is unmanageable workload. Unmanageable look very different for different people. So something what is unmanageable for me might be manageable for something else. So it's also individual. And unmanageable work might also look a bit different in a way. What is it? For somebody, might be just too much of one type of work, or it might be too many administrative tasks because struggling with that. For some people, it might be too much task switching, that you have multiple tasks that are quite different, you have to switch between them. So unmanageable workload might look very different for different people. Second, the big one is the lack of organizational support. So what do I mean by that? Um, if organization would have the company work for have some kind of systems they could actually monitor and prevent burnout, would actually notice that people are close to burnout, like for example seeing that there's lots of after hours work communication, there's lots of overtime, and then have systems to actually prevent this. That's, for example, that uh, to double check on their deadlines. Are they realistic? And then push back on them, because obviously if people have to work so much, that's some realistic here. To psychological spaces that people can express themselves and say, this is bothering me, doesn't work for me, I feel exhausted, I feel bad. And so this type of organizational support where actually people feel supported and they can express themselves. But it's also about how organizations handle burnout, because most of the time, you are kind of on your own. It's kind of pushed on individuals. So if you experience burnout, organizational support in a way they would give you some sick leave, you might get some medical support, psychological support, but then it's up to you to heal. Rarely would organizations go back and do retrospective of their processes and the ways of working to figure out why burnout happened. It's usually left on individual. Organizations would, not all, but would really kind of have a look and re-examine why this happened. Let's prevent from this happening again to other people in our organization. Um, Third cause is unfair treatment. Now, this ties up in the information I mentioned at the beginning, that women and non-binary people suffer from burnout more than the other groups. We still have lots of gender biases at work. That's just a fact. We still don't have salary equality. There is a glass ceiling, glass cliff, tall poppy syndrome, and if you're treated unfairly for a long period of time, this will lead unfair treatment, from being skipped from promotion, not being paid what you're supposed to, even if you are, for example, put on the projects that are less interesting or less aligned with you, or less likely to lead to the career trajectory that you're looking for. So unfair treatment, it's a wide range of how people can be untreated, and definitely in the long term leads to burnout. Then next one is a toxic management behavior. Unfortunately, nobody is immune to that. Um, this happens for multiple reasons. Sometimes people are just promoted, but they're actually not trained to be managers and leaders, and they don't have that confidence in their leadership skills. So what they do to lead very heavy-handedly, they start to micromanage, uh, they start to be aggressive or have microaggressions, or they use very outdated leadership methods, and or they become self-serving and don't really support the team, and that can definitely lead to burnout. And last but not the least, it's misaligned values. These days, people are looking for a little bit more than just a job. They want to feel that they belong, and that they work for something that has something that is bigger than us, that's kind of part of the change, making things better. And most of the companies would have some kind of values. They would have posters and they would say these are our values. But it can happen, that you're promised certain type of values at the job, and company realize that these values are not really implemented at the workplace. And here it might lead to frustration, cynicism, disappointment, and eventually can lead to burnout as well. Now, there are other causes of burnout at work as well, but these were like the top 5 that actually cause burnout to the employees. Oops. Now that we know what causes the burnout, what are the consequences of it? It's not only us individuals who suffer from the consequences of the burnout, but it's also the organizations. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both. Personal, for example, one of the things that it's very rarely mentioned when we talk about burnout, it's actually financial. Uh, when you have to take time off, and it might be anything from couple of weeks to a couple of years. It will definitely affect your finances and how you support yourself. It can also lead to the loss of job or decreasing role, or you might have to go part be able to go back to work even when you heal. Um, there's an anecdote that friend of mine who is not in the gaming industry, uh, workplace, and she left and she completely pivoted her career. She changed into something completely different. Her previous workplace called. It can lead to chronic health issues. I said, like, I had to still have tail of a burnout, and I still have some health problems because when you have really high cortisol in your body for a really long time, it does cause havoc to your body and to your systems. It takes some time to kind of balance it out and get back to normal. And there's a loss of self-esteem. When you experience burnout, you feel like that you were not good enough, that you didn't try hard enough, that you are too ambitious, and it kind of really kind of weighs heavy on you. And then there is this stigma of the society that people kind of start to eggshells around you, or they kind of want to give you space and time and makes you feel even a little bit more isolated, feel a bit more less. And that can cause lots of problems for your relationship with work and also your relationships outside of work. Can lead to relationship issues, for example, that your personality will change during that time, and that your partner might not be able or willing to support you, or that your friends will not understand you. Members, so it can also lead to the difficult relationship issues as well. Now there are also consequences with organization. Like if somebody in your team experience burnout, they will be on a sick leave, and is that sick leave going to be a couple of weeks, it can be years. So what to do, like how to handle this? I'm going to replace this person, I'm going to keep this workplace open, or what are you going to do, how are you going to organize work? There is definitely loss of efficiency because people would usually recognize they have a burnout when it's already quite late. So for long in diminished, not be as efficient or innovative or as creative as they would be if they would be feeling content and happy at work. When somebody experiences burnout, um, it's usually not the only person who is really stressed. It generally means that it's a relatively stressful situation or working environment, low morale at work. And when somebody's in a burnout and people are burnout leave and people at work, they do look how the organization is treating the situation, and that can also bring to, you know, uh, the work frustration, and people might start to think that I don't want to work for the company which is burning out people or treating people unfairly. I want to change jobs. So it can lead to churn and can lead to even to better reputation, that it might be much harder for the organization to recruit people because it becomes known as the place where people easily burn out. It's very hard to estimate how much this costs because this loss is not direct through different departments, but they estimated that a burnout globally costs over 1 trillion US dollars. That's the cost for the organization. So it's a huge cost and actually does affect organizations a lot. There are also ways how this can be improved, but that's a topic for another presentation. Now, these are now some tips for managing it and healing it. As I said, for the individuals. As I said, for burnout is a personal journey. Burnout healing is a personal journey, and it might take longer or shorter, or it might take a different approach for different people. Things have been proven that they help, or they will help you out in your healing path. The picture you see behind, it's not a stock photo. That's actually a view from my balcony in my home. And I mentioned talk about is what we can do to help with the burnout is to remove stressors. What does it mean? That we need to remove ourselves from the situation or remove the cause that's causing us stress. That's the first step. And that can be quite drastic. It can mean something taking a sick leave and remove yourself from work, but it can go deeper. It's important we analyze what is actually causing this stress and then remove it. Like I had to close my company because I was like, okay, I can't really handle this. I have to close it. But I also had to take it to the extreme that I had to leave countries because I realized that after being in Finland for so long, I felt that it's not the right place for me and that I should find or go to the place where I would feel more supported by the place where I live. So hence I live in Mediterranean village these days, and I'm very happy with the choice. But of course, it's not so drastic for everybody. But the key message here is to remove the stress, wherever they are, remove them from your life, even it might be a little bit drastic or big change. Second thing, which is really important, and it might be hard for lots of people, is to ask for help. It's very difficult to go through burnout and heal on your own. Some have supportive family and partners who can really support us at our journey, but they would not necessarily have the right tools to help us to actually heal. And this help can look any way what supports you. It could be psychological support, any other medical support. I work with a life coach for a couple of months, first couple of months burnout, which really helped me kind of to put me in that path of healing. But whatever works for you, but ask for help. It is really, really important. And another thing that kind of comes hand in hand with that is that reach out to people, socialize. I've been so involved with my work that I've spent years only with people who are somehow related to work. I kind of really lost contact or very infrequently contact my friends who are outside of work. And I actually reach out to them when the burnout happened and I start to socialize. I felt much better after reconnecting with them and talking about other things than work. And it really helped me to kind of realize, okay, there's more to this, there's more to life, there is the light at the end of the tunnel. Um, Third thing, like I call it find your joy. One symptom of burnout is that some things that and we enjoyed, they fall flat. They don't make us happy anymore. But here it's not the time to experiment and try to find things that will bring us joy. Like, for example, I have pets, I take care of them, I go out with them. And even if through burnout first it just felt like a duty, eventually start to like the joy of animals, now fostering animals as well. And I'm really joyous about it. I used to write before. I completely stopped because I didn't have time. But then during my burnout, I went back to writing and actually wrote a book throughout my burnout period. Don't get excited. It's nothing juicy. It's the book about testing, but it just felt good about actually writing and putting things and being creative. It can be anything for you, whatever it is. Try, experiment, even try things that you haven't even thought about before. Fourth one is mindfulness and self care. Now, I know when people mention meditation, lots of it doesn't work for me or it's mumbo jumbo, but it actually has been proven that meditation do help. And there are many different ways how to meditate. So people usually try one way, doesn't work, and they will stop. But there are many, many different ways. Even if you just go for a walk in the forest and you're fully present, you're listening to the birds, you're listening to the leaves rustling underneath your feet, you smell the earth, you smell the air. Um, Even just this kind of short walk, it's actually a meditative practice. It's going to help you out. So it doesn't have to be anything very complicated. And self care, self love, and self acceptance, because when you're in a burnout, you are not yourself. You can't meet your obligations. You are very emotional. You're very vulnerable. And this is the time not to be hard on yourself and judge yourself, but accept it. This is the period when you are really hurt for you to heal and you have to and support yourself. And this is the time when we really need to kind of focus on being here for ourselves and being our best friends. Another thing, it's a physical activity, whatever it is. I'm not saying go to sports because I don't do sports. Some people might, but walk in the nature, swimming, Even getting something like a massage would already count as a physical activity. So whatever that looks for you. Since I moved to Mediterranean, I start to swim. I swim. I open the season on 1st of May. I close the season on the 1st of November. So my last swim is going to be in a couple of days' time. And I realized I really enjoy it, and it's something that I like. But you still won't see me in a gym. But for you, it might look different. So whatever it is. And last but not least, introspection and boundary setting. Now, this is also a key for not experiencing burnout again. It's really important to examine our relationship with work. What do we want? What do we want from work? What do we want from life? What kind of workplace do we want? What do we expect from ourselves and from our career? How do we want to get there? And this can take time. And when we kind of figure it out, what we really want, then it's time to set up boundaries and say, okay, this is what I'm going to accept. This is the direction I want to move on. And this is something I won't accept anymore. Setting up boundaries can be very difficult because if you said 1,000 times yes, and then 1,001st time you say no, people will be surprised. You might get negative consequences. You might people saying, well, what is this? What's happening? But you always said yes. But it's really important to keep your boundaries, to maintain them, even if it means that you might lose some people in your life, you might lose opportunities, but they were not aligned with what you want anyway. And on the long term, they'll actually lead you to the place where you really want to be, although it initially might be challenging and might be tough. Which brings me to what's beyond burnout. So, what waits on the other side? Lots of stigma about burnout. It's one of these things that you are supposed to suffer on your own. You're supposed to go through it on your own. You're not supposed to talk about it. And people who went through burnout are very often considered being something less. They're somehow damaged. They can't handle pressure. We have to tiptoe around them. I don't know, being through a burnout, it's ridiculous. Um, People recover from burnout. You come to the other side. And I like to think that we come on the other side stronger. I like to think about myself now as a better professional than I was before the burnout, because actually I will not put myself in a situation where I would feel like exhausted or I don't have time for myself. I prioritize my self-care and well-being first. I actually know which tasks should I take, which ones I should not, which people I should align with which people should I not. So I tend to think that makes us better professionals and better workers than before. Now, I'm not recommending that we go through burnout to improve ourselves, but because it's difficult and it's hard, and I don't think anybody should go through it. But when we heal, it equally, if not more competent than we were before we experienced burnout.
Nikolina, we need to wrap up. We have 1 minute.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So, yep, I'm gonna now just come to the last slide. So I hope it's a big topic. Share enough to give you some insights into it. If you want to get in touch, feel free. There's my LinkedIn. You can follow or add me. I have a podcast, Leading the Way, where I talk about how it's to be a woman entrepreneur. There's my email and my webpage if you want to check more. And this is all we have time for. Sorry, I had to wrap it up so. I do not have time for any questions or like any more.
Thank you, Nikolina. We don't have time for the questions, but as we discussed, if you can stay here in the backstage and answer those questions, that would be great.
Okay, I will do so.
Thank you
So
very
just
much.
write the questions. Thank you all so much.